Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked you what you thought of the 7th episode of Ahsoka. I'll of course also then be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. And so let's get right to it, where we'll see that 16% of voters this time thought the episode was amazing, 43% then went with it was pretty good, 27% thought this was a mid or about average episode, which left 7% to say it wasn't very good, and a final 7% to say it was terrible. And as we've been doing all season long, let's compare these results to the ones from the previous episode, which were already down a bit from the one before that, mind you. And we'll see that the trend does indeed continue, that people were certainly not as impressed with this one as they have been with previous episodes, especially episode 5, which has been our highest rated one by far. We even had a couple percentage points falling down into those bottom two categories this time. There were certainly some out there who really did not seem to like this one, who had enjoyed previous episodes, assuming that our voting base is roughly the same here, that the same people are voting in every poll, more or less. Though most, or just 7% shy of half of all voters, still thought this was a pretty good episode. Either way, let's now move on to some comments, but not before once again just taking a moment to say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos across both channels. It is very much appreciated. Also a huge thank you to those who support the channels over on Patreon and have made for some enjoyable talk around this series and all things Star Wars, and in some cases beyond Star Wars, on my Discord server. All that said, let's kick it off, as we always do, with the top-rated comment from the poll, which this time came to us from Captain DC, who said, "I do think we could have added some time to have Ezra figure out what exactly had transpired, mainly how Thrawn is about to escape the other galaxy. Tension is non-existent." And look, yeah, I understand Sabine doesn't want to tell Ezra the truth and spoil the moment and spoil the reunion. She just wants to enjoy some time with her friend and all of that. I do get it, believe me, I do. But if I'm Ezra, I want to know how you found me and how you made it to another galaxy and how exactly we're getting home. And Ezra does very much seem to want to go home. He has mentioned it multiple times. And as I know I've pointed out before, both in videos and while having some debates with people in the comments about this one, as far as Sabine knows, keeping in mind until the end of the episode she thought Ahsoka was dead, but as far as she knows, there is only one chance they ever have of going home. Not that it's a good one or an easy one, but it is Thrawn's ship, or the super hyperspace ring ship too, the one known as the Eye of Sion that got him here in the first place. If they are not somehow on that thing before it leaves, they are going to be stuck here forever, again, as far as Sabine should know. And I think it's only fair to Ezra, who has been here for 10 years now, I think it's fair to tell him what is going on before he loses the chance to do anything about it either way here. Before it's too late to either find a way onto the ship and go home, somehow again, or to stop it and stop Thrawn from getting back to the other galaxy, which is the thing Ezra ended up here to prevent. But instead of telling Ezra anything, she literally takes a nap and wastes who knows how much time. Again, we don't feel like we have any tension here, right? And to me, I think that just makes no sense whatsoever, both in terms of the writing and in terms of Sabine's actions. Postponing telling Ezra is only going to make things a million times worse for her in the long run, and she has to know that. And she very well could be stuck here with Ezra forever, and he could be mad with her till the end of time, essentially, over not telling him some simple facts about what the heck is going on right now. But anyway, like I said, I have gone over that one before, many times in many places, so let us move on to this comment from Brennan Beecher, who said, "If they did anything to tell us what the cargo was or what Baylan is looking for, I think there would be a lot more hype for the final episode. Currently, I'm preparing for the finale to be mid." Yeah, and going along with that previous comment, what they pointed out that there has been very little tension, or pretty much that it's been non-existent, well, it's because we still don't fully understand what the stakes even are. We don't know what the Night Sister cargo is, nor do we have any idea what Baylan's been talking about the whole time, nor do we know why Thrawn making it back to the other galaxy automatically means defeat for the New Republic. Other than, of course, the show mainly through Hera, just flat out telling us this is really bad, and because we fans know to respect Thrawn and his abilities from elsewhere. But others, those who don't know Thrawn from the books or Rebels or wherever else it might be, they're going to look at one beat-up Star Destroyer, a few bandaged-up stormtroopers, a cool trooper named Enoch who has done nothing but say, "Yes, Grand Admiral," about a half dozen times or so, and at the 3 Night Sisters who have cool balls, and they're going to wonder, why should that New Republic fleet I've been seeing in this series or in the other episodes, why should they be worried about all this? And considering from what is leaked out there, this final episode is supposed to be in the ballpark of 45 minutes or so. I just don't know how you really do everything you need to do in order to give us a truly satisfying ending. Not that everything needs to be answered or explained in the finale. Certainly you can leave things hanging for a potential season 2. But certain things, yes, you do absolutely need to explain and wrap up for us to, again, understand what the stakes truly are and if we have seen our heroes fail or succeed in the end. Alright, and next up here we have this one from Thunder Genesis, who said, I would have liked an explanation on how Thrawn and Ezra were separated after the Rebels finale. I mean, they were standing right next to each other when they went into hyperspace. Well, let's also not forget that Thrawn was in the loving embrace of a Purrgil when they jumped into hyperspace as well. And if I'm Ezra and I can talk to the Star Whales, as they are often called now, and as we've seen him do before, we've seen him kind of communicate with them before, I try to tell the one that's got Thrawn in his tentacles to maybe squeeze him a little harder, squeeze until the blue guy's head pops off, and then drop me off somewhere on the next planet before you leave the galaxy. But anyway, to address the question, yeah, we don't know just how long the trip to the other galaxy takes, but we do know it's certainly not an instantaneous one. We know or saw that it took the Purrgil, I don't know, maybe a couple days at the very least in the Ahsoka series. The show didn't really touch on how long it was, but it just felt like it probably was a couple days, I guess. In other words, yeah, it is a good question. What did Ezra do aboard Thrawn's Star Destroyer for those couple days it took to get to the other galaxy? What did he do aboard a ship with Thrawn, a bunch of stormtroopers, not to mention Death Troopers? Seems like a pretty convenient thing to have skipped over. I don't really think it's a surprise it doesn't go into all those details, as it's also convenient to gloss over how they survived at all on this planet for 10 years. Or how they survived making the jump to hyperspace when the bridge was exposed to the vacuum of space when they made the jump. But anyway, and don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed the series despite lots of questions and lots of questionable writing. I'm not going to blunt my take on it here. It has been good, but it has been bad in some places, if we're being completely fair and honest about it. But anyway, yeah, there are a ton of interesting questions that the show has not gone into, and I'm going to boldly, or not so boldly predict, will not go into in the finale, including the trip to the other galaxy and the last 10 years spent by Thrawn and Ezra. What has happened? I mean, sure, Ezra and or Thrawn may give us a very, very brief overview on some of the things that happen. In particular, Ezra may do that if Ahsoka asks, how did you survive here for so long, or something like that, and he'll give a very brief answer. Something along those lines could certainly happen in the final episode. But I certainly wouldn't expect anything resembling a detailed write-up about what had transpired all this time, or how they even survived that trip in the first place, unless Timothy Zahn writes a book to fill this time period, which I do remember hearing he was willing to do, though I don't recall when or where I saw him say that. But if you do remember, do enlighten us all in the comments below and tell us if you saw that quote somewhere. But for now, let's move on to this comment from JSNDMS, who said, these Disney Star Wars shows really highlight how important John Williams' score was in the success of the franchise. It's the whole soul and emotional center of the story. Its absence is why so much of modern Star Wars feels hollow. It's something I've really noticed recently watching Rebels. Using the Star Wars music really puts you right back in the world. It's so crucial and continues to be underused. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again here and now, if Star Wars had gone with anything like the sci-fi music or scores of the time, if it had gone with what was popular back then, keeping in mind dystopian films like the original Planet of the Apes were popular, and even George Lucas's own THX 1138 was a dystopian film, we wouldn't be here today talking about Star Wars. I do think John Williams and his score were that important. What he did added that much or changed the feel of the movie that much. Again, just watch the films, or try to watch the films or imagine them with a totally different score and ask yourself if this has the same effect. And though I'm not that upset some of the other shows have recently tried to do something different with their scores, something unique, I understand you're not always going to try to use the original Williams stuff. But I do feel like you almost always should use the Williams stuff. Star Wars should go for that epic sounding feeling score. It's as part of Star Wars now as virtually anything else is at this point. And I'm pleased to say that so far Kevin Kiner, who has been the sort of animation version of John Williams, doing such things as Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, and so on, I think he's been nailing it with Ahsoka. I feel like this is very much a Star Wars sounding soundtrack, and it's definitely brought something some of the other shows maybe haven't. Our next comment here then comes from Sea of Salt, who said, I thought it was one of the better of the bunch. The reunion was great. Ezra's actor clearly did his homework, And the battle scene was well executed. It felt most like an episode of Rebels out of all of them so far, and I loved all of it. My one and only problem was Hera's court-martial. I think it could have made for a tense drama section spanning perhaps an episode if they were given time, much like some of the corruption arc episodes from Clone Wars. Alas, it seemed it wasn't meant to be. Overall, I've been pleasantly surprised by the show, but the looming shadow of Sabine's possible Force sensitivity is still odd to me. I think it kind of cheapens the message of her character, but we've yet to see if they'll go there, so I'll hold out hope for now. Can't wait for next week. And yeah, the court-martial scene was odd or off for a few different reasons, I think. I mean, first of all, why didn't Hera just open up by saying it was an order given to her by Senator Organa, clear the whole thing up immediately? She seemed to even know Leia was going to cover for her and had essentially covered for her already because the message was on its way. And yeah, I get it. They all knew it was kind of BS that it was Leia covering for her after the fact. Even Senator Ziono knew it was basically BS and let it slide, I guess, because it was Leia and you don't mess with Leia. At least not until the book Bloodline, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, if I'm Senator Ziono, I'm asking, why didn't you say this right away, that it was an order from Leia? Or why didn't Leia, I don't know, just directly message whoever she needed to before the hearing even began to clear the whole thing up? Why did she need a droid to deliver the message or the information? And I know it's kind of a thing in Star Wars to send droids, and Leia in particular. But I feel like Leia dialing up Mon Mothma, telling her she ordered it, ends the hearing before it even started. And thus all of this just feels like an excuse to bring in C-3PO. Either way, let's move on to this comment from Julian Lopez, who said, I really liked Thrawn strategizing in the background throughout the episode as the fight went on. It really made you feel like he's the big brain evil villain that's always one step ahead of everyone else. Hopefully that continues into the finale. And I mean, he did feel that way, but I don't know that he was truly that intelligent here. It was, again, like the Rebels Thrawn, him saying in the end that you don't understand how good it was that the good guys got away to be a problem later on, when it really feels like he should have and could have just easily killed them, that he could have sent in some TIE fighters to just blast their position, or have those fighters that were chasing Ahsoka's ship, have those fighters break off and then go attack their position. I guess what I'm saying here is, instead of sending in gunships and stormtrooper fodder for our heroes to look good against, I just sent in one TIE bomber and end the fight pretty quickly. Assuming, of course, he has TIE bombers. But anyway, let's read just a few final comments before wrapping this one up. Starting with this comment from Worst Word Monger, who said, this episode does have its problems, like that classic enemies forgetting they have guns. But overall, this episode is shifting my hope of the show back to positive. I felt like it was going downhill after the third episode, but this one was pretty good. We also then have this one from Zen Du Argos, who said, the show has felt like Rebels Season 5 most of the time. Rebels was meant for a younger audience, and this episode felt like it belonged more in that animated series than in a live-action series meant for an older audience. There's also then this comment from A. Wilkerson II, who said, I liked Ezra's Force Fu, or whatever martial arts Jedi study that he utilized. The execution was excellent. It makes me really want to see what he does with a lightsaber. And then there was this one from Slacktian Man, who said, when Ezra said he didn't need the saber because the Force was his weapon, I was expecting some crazy Force powers, but he did a mid to low Force push, quite the anti-climax. And finally here we have this comment from Highway Bert Does Gaming, who said, the highlight of this episode for me was how perfectly Amon played Ezra. Couldn't have cast that better. He is the only character so far that has felt so familiar to the animated version. All of the other characters have felt off to varying degrees. Well, that's going to be all I got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this episode of the Ahsoka series and what are your hopes and fears for the finale, or you can tell me what you thought of what I or anyone else had to say in the comments about this episode. Whatever you choose to do, though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.